All right, here we are, Coach Slay, Penn RTC.
Prtc.
PRTC. We don't want it just be Penn, right? Because Drexel's here as well.
Exactly. So you got that immediately. So I think originally when they started this thing in the end of 2014, they used the term Penn RTC, but when they made the decision to partner with Drexel, I mean, we understand Penn, University of Pennsylvania, right? Its nickname is Penn.
Right.
So whenever they decided to partner with Drexel, then it was like, well, let's not call it the Penn RTC anymore, clearly. Let's call it the Pennsylvania Regional Training Center, but then that's a lot of words. So then we clearly started really branding our organization, the PRTC.
PRTC, I appreciate the clarification there. So talk to me a little bit about what an RTC means to a university like Drexel and Pennsylvania.
Well, I think an RTC gives you an Olympic training center, right? It gives you this presence where you can recruit kids that when they say, hey, I want to wrestle and be an NCAA champion or an All-American, but also when I graduate, I want to train for the World Championships and the Olympics. So you give them this natural transition where they can graduate from Penn or Drexel, and if they say, hey, I want to train for the Olympics for 3 or 4 years before I start my life in the real world, we give them an opportunity, a platform to do that, where they can actually, if they qualify based on their success, that they could get paid to train full time, to train for the World Championships or Olympics. So it gives us that Olympic Training Center, that presence, but I think it also gives us an ability to sharpen college wrestlers at Penn and Drexel, right? So we're all smart enough to know if you put Jordan Burroughs, Mark Hall, Joey McKenna, Dave McFadden with 18-year-old college freshmen, 19-year-old college sophomores, they're going to get better faster, right? Their trajectory is going to be on the up and up.
Right.
So I think it gives us that presence, but I think it also gives us some phenomenal role models and leaders, and I say humbly for our organization. Gives us some phenomenal role models in the community that can go out there and just, for example, serve at Beat the Streets Philly here, connect with these inner city kids. Like, for example, I was talking to Joey McKenna today. Like, he's a specific mentor for one of these Beat the Streets Philly kids that he's pouring into on a weekly basis. So it gives us these role models that can be role models, motivators, and mentors for high school wrestlers in the area.
You're touching on an awful lot there that has nothing to do with wrestling. What else is the PRTC besides wrestling, which is obvious to the fans and wrestling folk out there? What else are you doing around here?
So do we want to coach, for me, do I want to coach guys that make world teams, Olympic teams, and win gold medals? I mean, do I want Jordan Burroughs to make the world team and win his 5th world title? Like, duh. Of course I do. And it's a given. That's why we're going to come in here, bust our rears today to get better. But wrestling is only part of what we do. I can't speak on behalf of all RTCs, but the PRTC wrestling is part of what we do. But what we're really, our mission is to enrich lives locally here in the Philly area, but also globally through the sport of wrestling. What does that mean? Globally, clearly, we just went to Norway. We've gone to Cuba many times. When we go to Cuba, I always tell my guys, bring as much extra t-shirts and shorts that you can. If you have extra wrestling shoes, because those guys over there, the average person makes $40 a month. So let's take extra stuff, give it to them. So yeah, do we want to impact Philadelphia? Of course. But we also want to enrich lives globally. So that's our mission. We want to win wrestling matches, of course. But there's something more than winning wrestling matches. And then I think part of it is who you recruit. And we decided to come up with some core values that represent who we are. And we have 4 of them. So our core values are faith over fear, full effort, struggle well, and that last one I've kind of talked about a little bit already is to serve others. And we're not going to bring somebody in as an athlete here unless when I say those 4 things, if they're like, oh man, those are really important to me as a person, then they could be a fit. But if I say serve others and they're like, oh, why would I want to do that? They're probably not going to be a fit. Not probably. They won't be a fit with the PRTC. So of course we want to win wrestling matches and gold medals and all that stuff. But we exist to do so much more.
So you start out with one athlete, Richard Perry, and now you have all these names that you just mentioned, right. Jordan Burroughs and Joey McKenna and Mark Hall and McFadden. You got to pay them somehow. What's the RTC system set up like? How do you pay these athletes? We're talking about professional wrestling.
Yeah, this is the professional level for Olympic wrestling. So we know that there's the NFL, NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball. For Olympic level wrestling, our professional level is RTC. regional training center. But we're not for profit. We're nonprofit because we're not creating events, right, with 70,000 people in the stands where we can sell tickets and make all that money.
Right.
Like we don't have that opportunity, yet. Maybe one day down the road. But the only way we can create revenue to pay these pros is that the only way we can do it right now is being a nonprofit, meaning that we have to go out and inspire potential donors, inspire them, cultivate them, and eventually there has to be a solicitation where I have to ask them, would you be willing to support the PRTC? Would you be willing to support our mission, our core values, and these guys so they can seek to become world Olympic champions, so they can be role models in the community? Would you be willing to support us? And thankfully, over the last, I've been doing this for 5 years. Thankfully, that number's continued to rise, so we could go recruit guys like Joey McKenna and Dave McFadden and Mark Hall and Jordan Burroughs, because if you don't have the money to pay them, they're clearly not going to be able to come, because these guys, they're not going to wrestle for free because there's other opportunities for them to make money.
Right.
So what a lot of people don't understand, these RTCs, there's somebody or a team of people, a board of people that have to spend a lot of time and effort, raising money to fund the nonprofit to make sure these athletes get paid. So it's not just, hey, let's go teach them a snap, post, double, and go win some matches and go win the world title. There's so much more to it. It's very, I got my degree at the Wharton School of Business here at Penn, and there's a lot of business acumen that goes into running these things. And I never told anybody I want to be a coach ever in my life. I thought I was going to be a businessman, but interestingly enough, I feel like running the PRTC, I can be a businessman and use those same principles, but run a successful nonprofit.
So you started here for school. You go out, you do some things, you end up in Colorado Springs. You're enticed to come back. Coach Reina entices you to come back. There's more to that story. Tell us what brought you back to run the PRTC.
So I was in business in Dallas, Texas. I was in commercial real estate, and I realized I missed wrestling. I missed Olympism. I missed what it takes to train to beat the Russians and Iranians and the Turks, right? So at that period of time, Zeke Jones got the job as the national coach at the end of 2008. He called me and said, hey, Brandon, I'm seeking an assistant coach. Would you ever think about getting involved in wrestling again? I said, it's just really interesting you ask. I think I'm kind of burnt out of this business world here in Dallas. And he just said, would you ever consider it? And so my girlfriend I'd been dating for about 2.5 years, she basically said, well, I'm not going anywhere unless you unless you put a ring on my finger. So that process sped up. I asked Tina to marry me, and we got married. We moved to Colorado Springs, and I coached our national team with Zeke Jones and then Bruce Burnett for some years, and Bill Zadek. And so I did that for about 8 years. Wonderful job, wonderful opportunity. All 3 of my girls were born in Colorado Springs. But I started being gone over 100 days a year. And again, it was great for me. I was going to Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, right, Armenia, Azerbaijan, all these places that most people don't go. So it was fun for me, but my wife's back home with 3 kids for 12 days by herself. She says basically like, is there any other thing that you could do on the planet? I'm like, well, yeah. So I was on the board of the PRTC at the time.
Okay.
And they ended up saying, hey, there's a big elephant in the room. Would you ever consider moving back up to Philadelphia and not just being the coach of the PRTC? You would be the head coach, but would you consider being the executive director, somebody that could fundraise and run and do the payroll and the health insurance, the dental insurance, and the 401k plan? Would you consider doing this full package? And they ended up making me a great offer, and I prayed about it with my wife, and my kids were excited for me to be around more. So we came here about 5 years ago, and since then, it's just been a wonderful opportunity to recruit. We had Richard Perry and then Danny Mitchell joined. I would say that was the first 2 guys, and then that first generation of the guys I recruited were in weight class order: BJ Futrell, our first national team member, Chase Pammy, Dan Valmont, and then Richard Perry, who was already here. And then the second generation of guys has become in weight class order: Ethan Lezak, Joey McKenna, Dave McFadden, Jordan Burroughs, and Mark Hall. So I think there's just been a healthy rise of fundraising, a healthy increase of adding the next athlete on. It definitely has not been like this.
Right.
I'm thankful it's kind of been like this. And I think we're set now for this next, it's not a quad, right? It's less than 3 years now, going towards Paris. We're in a place now we're going to start doing some more fundraising and hopefully add, maybe 1 or 2 athletes to our organization.
From where I sit, it definitely hasn't gone up and down, but it has sharply gone up. I know it's been 5 years for you. It's been a grind. That's what wrestling's all about. But from where I sit as a fan, you've done a tremendous job in getting talent in the room. Let's talk about the talent on the mat. You just came back from Norway.
Yeah.
Great stuff happening there. The guys in the room here, how does everybody gel? How do they get along as professionals? Do you find yourself having to manage egos at all?
Yeah.
Or does everybody just completely buy into the 4 core values that you're talking about?
The key to that, the answer to that question is: are there egos? Is there any type of friction in the room? Like, how do you manage those guys? The key to that is who you recruit. And I'm a big believer, if you recruit the right talent, not just wrestling talent, but talent as a person, and you build the right skills into them, number 2, and then the third thing is you build the right community culture with them, then you don't have to deal with that kind of junk you talked about as much. I think if you just recruit some guy who's a great wrestler, you don't know anything about him, you have no mission, you have no core values, and it's all about winning, you're probably gonna have a lot more struggles like that. But thankfully for us, I would say, not only do I not deal with that, I think these guys really see each other like a family. And we'll use that term a lot, the PRTC family. Jordan Burroughs just had his 4th child. Richard Perry just had his 4th child. I have 4 children. So, I mean, if you get, the Perrys and the Burroughs and the Slays together, there's 12 kids
Right.
running around everywhere.
Yep. So
So it really is like a family. And then you have the Mark Halls, Dave McFadden's, and Joey McKenna's who aren't married with no kids, and they kind of get to be babysitters sometimes. Like, I know when we were going to Norway, Joey went and picked up Beacon Burroughs and Oral Burroughs, and took them to go get donuts, right? And so that's just something that's not happening, I don't think, a lot of other places, but it's because of, again, recruiting the right men, because these guys aren't kids anymore. They're not young men anymore. I mean, when you're married with 4 kids, you're a man, right?
Yep.
It's recruiting the right men, and then again, building the skills into them, spiritually, mentally, and physically, but then also just fostering that community. And I think when you do those things, talent, skills, and community, you're going to build a successful team.
You talk about faith over fear being one,
Right.
and now you've said spiritually, so you've alluded to, something else that's involved here. How important is faith to the PRTC? Is it an individual thing? Is it out in the open? How important is that here?
Well, I think it's important, just to be clear, is in regards to faith for the PRTC. I mean, we're not a Christian organization. We're not like a parachurch ministry,
Yeah.
like FCA Wrestling or Athletes in Action.
Right.
But I would say most people know that the men we have that are part of our team, and potentially women down the road, we're open, to adding, female wrestlers down the road if the fit again is right. But the men that we have part of our organization, they happen to be Christians, and the thing about that is I trust that they're living out their faith, and they happen to have a higher moral compass than a lot of guys, and they're not just saying it, they're living it out. They're living out that faith over fear. And so for our particular guys, that word faith comes from the word confide. Fide is faith. So faith is confident. They're confident in themselves, but they're also confident in God, that God loves them, cares for them, created them in His image. That's what makes them so special. Their identity is not in winning wrestling matches. Their identity is in Christ, and them being Christians. And I think that really plays into who they are as men as well. And for us to be really clear, if somebody wants to join the PRTC, it's not a prerequisite.
Right.
Do you have to be a Christian? I mean, if you believe in our mission, our values, we'd clearly be open to somebody, joining our team. But it just happens that the guys that do fit our mission, the guys that do fit our values, the guys that I feel like would be a great fit for our community, they do happen to be Christians. So yeah, our faith, the guys have faith in themselves, but they also do have faith in God that conquers their fear. And we all believe that God's given us these gifts, physical, mental, and spiritual gifts, to use them the best of our ability, full effort. We know that life's going to be hard, and we're called to the word struggle, right? Wrestle means to struggle against an opposing force. So to struggle well means to wrestle well, right? And that last one, we know that we're not here to just serve ourselves. We're here on this earth to serve others. So I think, even our values, I think, are very, they're biblically based, but they don't have to be. Those are things we should be doing in the world anyway.
Yep, you got that right. That's true. So you talked about fundraising, you've talked about events. What's next for the PRTC?
The next thing for us is we have our first event we've ever had called the PRTC Evening of Celebration. That's on November 20th. That's where we're going to celebrate all of our guys. First, like BJ Futrell, first national team member. Richard Perry, second national team member. Joey McKenna, first Olympic trial finalist, right? Jordan Burroughs, first world team member, first world champion. So we'll celebrate those guys, but we're also going to we're going to launch a fundraising campaign called the Ambassador Campaign. And that's where we're going to say, hey, we got 3 years to Paris. We'd like to add some more athletes. We'd like to do some more international tours, training and competition internationally. But to do that, it takes support. It takes money to do that. So we're going to be asking people, again, seeking to inspire them to help support our cause.
That would be live and in person. Somebody wants to support you from across the country or even across the world. You said it yourself, it's a world mission. How do they do that? They hit the website up to start with?
Yeah.
Okay.
The best way to support us is to go to our website, PennsylvaniaRTC.org, because we're a nonprofit. In the upper right-hand corner, there's a donate link, so they can give. They can join us by being a monthly partner, or they can give one time. We're thankful for any of those. And if somebody wants to write a check and send that to us, they can do that through our website as well. But any times people support our mission, we're very thankful for that.
I appreciate the time. You got anything else?
That's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.